Well, a very good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Ktn Business Today. As Kenya today marks the National Prayer Day, we'll be taking stock of how this has affected the markets. We did see from the handshake, it graduated to the hug. And that was after President Uhuru Kenyatta reached out to opposition leader Raila Odinga, and both teams saying that they were apologetic for anything they had done to each other. Well, we'll be taking stock of how this has really had an impact on the markets or not. We'll be speaking to Ken Gishinga, who is our resident economic analyst. He'll be joining us shortly for this all-important conversation. First things first, let's take a look at how the markets are performing on this last day of May 2018. How has the shilling performed against the US dollar? Well, as you can see, the numbers are out. Well, the shilling today is trading at 101.41, selling at 101.46, whereas the sterling pound is trading at 134.49, buying, selling at 134.79. The euro is trading at 117 shillings and 8 cents, whereas it is selling at 117.34. Well, the dollar has remained relatively stable there. Not much movement, even despite the various reconciliatory messages that came out from the National Prayer Day. Well, let's look at the NSE turnover as of last evening. Well, the markets closed off at a high of 652 million turnover, and the shares traded stood at 25.5 million shilling. And the NSE 20 share index closed off at 3,308.08, whereas the bonds traded was at 1.9 billion. Well, a lot of dipping there on the bond market, really. Well, the most active counters, we have Safaricom topping there. They're up 7.56 million. Athi River Cement, 4.61 million. Equity Group, 4.18. Kengen, 2.3 million. Let's take a look at some of the biggest gainers as of this hour now. Well, this is up 9.3%. Sugar up 7.14%. ARM up 9.26%, whereas Samia Africa, they are actually up 8.7%. And looking at the losing counters now, where it will be interesting to see which of the stocks did not perform so well as trading continued even as the week comes to a close. As of course, you know, tomorrow will be a public holiday here in the country. Let's turn our attention now to the losing counters. If we have the numbers, well, Kenya Airways, they are down 9.84%. Nairobi Business Ventures down 9.52%. TransCentury down 7.45%. And the NSE down 6.78%. Well, that's a quick look at the markets as of this hour. And we continue to trail to see some of the big numbers as they continue to come through. And of course, how will this really impact on market activity in the country and in the region? Well, from the markets, let's take you to the top story now, and that is, of course, the National Prayer Day, where opposition leader Raila Odinga has also spoken, lauding the Progressive Unity Pact between Jubilee government and the opposition. Odinga has attributed national healing and economic stability to the 9th March handshake between him and President Uhuru Kenyatta. Let's listen it now.
If Rabin and Arafat could shake hands, Mandela could shake hands with de Klerk. What is wrong in Raila Odinga shaking hands with Uhuru Kenyatta? And when we shook hands, many things changed in our country. The shilling steadied. The stock market itself also steadied. Generally, the peace returned to our country.
Let us not see forgiveness as a sign of weakness. It's a sign of great strength. It's a sign of great strength. And ladies and gentlemen, we are a democracy. People will never always agree on everything. And we will have differences in terms of political opinion. But let us today say that those differences shall never, ever, ever be allowed to cause bloodshed, misery, destruction of property in our land. We can agree to disagree and move forward. And on those issues...
Well, President Uhuru Kenyatta, they are also speaking up in relation to the various issues facing the country, as today he did offer an olive branch, really, to the opposition leader once more, and he also made it clear that he is asking for forgiveness. And just to get reactions, really, on these developments, and I'm now briefly joined by Ken Gishinga. Ken, of course, quite a lot happening today. We did see the handshake moving to the hug, and people are saying the economic outlook looks a bit warm after the hug.
Absolutely, Abby. We saw a whole new level of bromance this morning, and this is every investor's dream, that the country might find a stable foundation, that all the political players might be on the same page, and we might finally aspire to what Vision 2030 can do for this country.
Interesting. Well, we'll be getting back to Ken Gishinga just to continue to dissect some of these developments in the political space and the impact it has on the economic agenda of the country. Well, to some stories now, and the Vision 2030 Delivery Board has insisted that Kenya is on track to achieving Vision 2030 despite the financial constraints and policy-making decisions by the National Assembly that continue to hinder the progress made so far. Francis Mtalaki reports from Mombasa.
The dream of transforming Kenya from lower middle income to middle income economy is still on track, according to the board tasked to the realization of Vision 2030.
Roughly halfway. Looking back, I feel that the vision has progressed very well, not without challenges. There's been significant challenges.
Some of these challenges include limited coordination and implementation of flagship projects, inadequate funding of these flagship projects due to over-reliance on the National Treasury for funding, lengthy procurement and litigation processes, land issues, in particular compensation of communities where Vision 2030 projects are located, slow development of policies.
The challenge that involves is humongous, is huge. But I think it is clear that our economy has delivered precisely on that.
There are a lot of complementary sectors that go hand in hand. And whereas you might have a push for one sector, you cannot ignore all the others because of the complementarity.
Speaking while marking 10 years since Vision 2030 was launched, the industry players cautioned the government from borrowing as it may cripple the economy. They instead urged the government to focus on domestic finances that attract better returns for the country's development agenda and creation of employment.
Our current debt is sustainable, but we don't have headroom for too much more borrowing. We can borrow in case of emergency, but not for roads like Mombasa, Nairobi. That one we give to the private sector so that we retain that headroom.
It's true there are the PPPs, which a lot of us have heard and talked about, but PPPs are just one option or one set of options which may or may not work in particular projects. So it's not a sort of a silver bullet. It needs to be applied correctly.
I'm very confident that the next 12 years, we will get exponential growth.
And so Vision 2030 has about 180 flagship projects. And in terms of sizing and deciding what to push, what has been very clear from MTP1 is to make sure that we push the economy together. Otherwise, if you do not push a lot of the sectors together, there are some which, if left on their own, no development will take place and there will be a drag on the rest of the economy.
With 12 years of articulation of the vision, mega projects from infrastructure and the realization of the Big Four agenda are key in making Vision 2030 come true. Francis Mtalaki, Ktn News, Mombasa.
Many thanks, Mtalaki, for that report. And to more stories now. In a bid to fast-track the implementation of the presidential Big Four agenda, the government is set to construct a multi-billion shilling irrigation water project in Busia and Bungoma counties to enhance food security in the region. Ashley Mazuri reports.
Busia County is expected to receive over 20 billion shillings from the government and other development partners in construction of the 5.7 billion Kocholia Amagoro Amoni multi-purpose water resources and food crop development project. The move is set to enhance access to water, control flooding, boost irrigation and hydro infrastructure, and the 10 billion Loa Nzoia irrigation project in Budalangi.
Huu muradi utakamilika, wanywe maji zaidi maelfu ya watu kutoka Teso, tulete stima hapa na vile vile tufanye irrigation zaidi ya ekari 10,000 hapa, tupige njaa marufuku in this county and in this country.
Tuko na hii mradi wa Malaba Kojolia and saa hii tuko under procurement. Na hii project tumepata pesa kutoka African Development Bank, 1.2 billion shillings.
The project is designed to irrigate over 10,000 acres of arable land via irrigation, which will enhance food security in the region that has had bouts of dry spells. Apart from enhancing access to water, the 4.5 billion Angololo multi-purpose project along Malaba River, Teso North, will be shared by the neighboring Republic of Uganda.
Ukiweka pamoja miradi hii tatu ambayo iko katika kaunti yenu ya Busia, unaongea juu ya mabilioni, karibu mabilioni 30 ambayo itakuja kwa hii kaunti yenu, na ambayo itafanya Busia County ichangie pakubwa agenda kubwa ya food security through irrigation. So hapa ndio tunaangalia kuja kutoa chakula, tukiwa na ndugu zetu Ukambani wana shida, tuwapelekee chakula huku, na hiyo inaleta utajiri hapa kwenu.
Meanwhile, in Bungoma, the construction of a 4.1 billion shillings dam in Bumula constituency will start this year, despite protests from villagers demanding better compensation. The dam will be built in Sioyo Sango village and construction will take 4 years. However, villagers protested over the 750,000 shillings per acre compensation, calling it too little. They said it's based on valuation done 3 years ago. The 24 meters high dam, which has a storage capacity of 3.92 million cubic meters, is expected to irrigate 1,700 hectares and serve 20,000 people in Kakamega, Busia and Bungoma counties. Ashley Mazuri, KTN News.
Well, indeed, a lot happening in the water space in the country. We do hope that these projects can be realized in good time for the betterment of the society. Well, we'll be having another conversation now on matters to do with the environment and issues to do with plastics as well. And I'll be speaking to John Waithaka, who is the chairman of PETCO. He's already with us here in studio. And we'll be taking stock really of Kenya, where it is, and in relation to issues to do with the environmental management, as well as the outlook for the various industries. Well, before that, let's take you to our story first. And even as the Kenya Power steps up its efforts to connect more households in the country to the national grid, a group of Kenyans living on islands in Lake Victoria have always been ignored. The country's power supplier have lived in darkness since independence.
Its efforts to connect more households in the country to the national grid, a group of Kenyans living on the highlands in Lake Victoria have always been ignored by the country's power supplier and have lived in darkness since independence.
Energy is very key, is very important for life and for powering everything that we do in life.
Kiwa is an highland on Lake Victoria, just 800 meters off the shores of Lake Victoria in Homa Bay County. Kiwa Highland is not connected to the national grid, meaning residents mostly rely on kerosene lamps for lighting.
Hii stima imesaidia sisi sana. Wakati tulikuwa hakuna hii stima, tulikuwa nang'ang'ana sana na hii mafuta. Na saa ingine ilikuwa ngumu kusoma ya watoto. Saa ingine mafuta inaiza. Saa ingine hauna hii taya hii ya nini ya chumni. Sasa hii taya ya kienyeji tunaita nyangile. Inatawanga mosi nyingi sana.
Across the highland, the town of Nathiwa has power, but the logistic of getting the national grid to Kiwa means the highland is not likely to get power in the near future.
The residents here are in need of power for various things, to light their homes, to heat, not for heating purposes. They need it also for cooling their fish.
In 2014, PowerGen Renewable Energy identified Kiwa Highland as one of the places that needed a microgrid and did a pre-survey where 14 people expressed interest in having their homes powered. And after talking to the chief and other local leaders, the PowerGen team did a detailed survey in 2015, and the installation of the solar microgrid took place.
We generate power to people. We are 55 people connected, the households connected. Among the 55 households, there are 7 business houses which are connected to the power, and they are really appreciating the power.
The 1.5 kilowatts microgrid has enabled residents enjoy power just like other Kenyans, with school-going children being the beneficiaries. Demand for power in the highland is growing, and PowerGen and Energy for Impact are monitoring the usage to determine how many more people can be connected to the existing microgrid without incurring more costs.
The 55 connections are not enough. More people still want connections, and the system can support up to 100 connections.
The Kiwa Highland microgrid was put up with financing support from the Kenya Climate Innovation Center. Kiwa Highland is one of the islands within Lake Victoria, and with a population of close to 6,000 people, this population for a long time lived in darkness until they were connected to the solar power grid by PowerGen Renewable Energy Company, and now business is booming at the highland, and school-going kids can study long into the night. Philip Keitang, KTN News.
Quite innovative there, coming out from Lake Victoria, indeed powering communities. Well, like I told you, we want to dive into that conversation on matters to do with the environment. And I'll be joined by the chairman of PETCO, John Waithaka, who is with us in studio. Many thanks for making time for us. And just before we get into the conversation, today we did see a lot happening in the political space where President Uhuru Kenyatta asked for forgiveness, and he reaffirmed his commitment to fighting corruption in the country. I just want to pick your quick thoughts on this.
Again, this is quite a good opportunity for the country. I've read about this in the media. And for us as a country, coming together and putting God first and saying that we want to move ahead together, I think is a good opportunity for the country. We have seen what has happened in the past when we were not working together, that the business environment was not conducive. Now we have got a much better business environment. We have got a very better social issues out there. So I think all of us putting together and forging our way forward, I think is quite a good opportunity for the country and opens a lot of other opportunities for us.
All right. Yeah. Very, very pace-setting. Thank you so much, Bwana Waithaka. And of course, PETCO is a Kenya private sector initiative aimed at coordinating collection and recycling of PET packaging. And just talk to us about, we know next week we'll be having a big event, of course, that will be the World Environment Day. And talk to us about really the journey that PETCO has had.
PETCO has been with us for a couple of months. And by the way, PETCO, the full name is Kenya PET Recycling Company, but we are trading as PETCO Kenya. We formed this company back towards the end of last year. From the time that we formed this company,